Hello everybody! Before we get started, a couple housekeeping notes. Some parts of this video I'll be recycling some bits I wrote from my Substack a couple of years ago that nobody read. Bloody hell, great start, Jim. And I will be using the teleprompter this time instead of reading the whole thing off of paper. I'm sure I'll have absolutely no problems with that technology, but I'm still not going to edit out or fix errors in speaking in the speakos. I'll just say the line over again because I'm a human being speaking to human beings, and we're not doing the whole polished product for you to consume thing. So that's that, and yeah, I'm sure there was something else I was going to say, but maybe I should just stick to the script, because I think we got a ways to go here. And I'm faffing about. Been nervous about doing this video just because it's quite an undertaking. Let's see if I could be competent. So, the importance and primacy of problematic material. Part 1, Introduction. Oh God, I'm not used to the teleprompter, and you're just gonna deal with it because, fuck, I'm stalling. Anyway. Why do I do this? Show white power. I should put these in order. See, yeah. Why do I do this? Show Book of Antithesis. Why do I do this? Show Fuck for Satan. Oh, repping my influences. That was the influence for that cover. Yeah. Why do I do this? Show Death, Love, Doom. And why do I do this? Show the butchery of Agnes Gooder. Oh, that was slick. You know, why do I do those things? Oh, forgot to mention Towers 2. Why do I do that too? Well, you know, releasing those sort of things, it's the same repeating pattern. We release something that gets people upset for one reason or another. And then we become dismissive, if we already suspected it would upset people, or defensive, if we're caught off guard by it. And the next time we're releasing something that we suspect people might get upset about, we get a bit nervous about it because of the blah, blah, blah that will probably come. We do it anyway, but we get nervous. And when people are upset by some work, they very often don't just recognize that they don't recognize that as an expression of their personal taste. They receive it as having been actually wronged or harmed, and that I have done something wrong or harmful to them. Repeat that cycle a few times. Then repeat that cycle for over a decade. Each time, in an effort to stay sane, I'm being a little more dismissive or a little more defensive, and then a little bit more nervous preparing for the next time. It's a mentally debilitating cycle, one that requires a greater and greater callousness to the claims of harm generally, just to function day to day. And it's time again. I've got 11 new projects at the printer or about to go. 1 or 2 of them are of that persuasion. Here we go again, and it's such a stupid cycle. But if you try to point this out, the responses are entirely predictable. You keep poking the bear. What did you expect was going to happen? You know what the current environment is like, and you did it anyway. You shouldn't act surprised. You deserve this for what you've done. So the question is, who is the victim in this cycle? Someone who imagines and creates a fictional work outside of the consensus norm? Or an audience who by definition will for the most part enjoy only things within the consensus norm? My answer, of course, is that there can be no real-life victims of a work presented as fiction. It's simply not possible. No matter what the work is, a movie, painting, writing, music, it can't do anything to you. Your reaction comes from within you, and whether it's ecstasy, agony, indifference, or whatever other reaction you have, that's what you're doing to yourself, not what the work is doing to you. All the work does, all it can possibly do, is ask you, how are you going to respond to me? And even if it's your subconscious that answers, that's still you and not the work. Part 2, problematic. Creative works that fall outside of consensus acceptability are sometimes called problematic by people of certain political sympathies. And given that I've titled this whole thing The Importance and Primacy of Problematic Works, perhaps some definitions are in order. How I interpret the word problematic is really not meaning anything at all. It is simply casting a work that makes one uncomfortable as some sort of real-world moral concern in an effort to discourage others from even engaging with the work and to punish the creator for having done it. This is also done to serve as an example to others. What will happen to them if they dare make problematic work? I could leave it there and consider that a definition well done, but I'll go one further with my more emotional response and understanding when I see the term. In effect, the usage of the word problematic in regards to creative work signals that you want to be a cultural commissar, or a Goebbels if we want to be politically balanced, attempting to exercise power and control over what creative work should be allowed. It is to declare that creative work must display and promote specific values, or it should not exist. Yeah, that definition is a work even more well done. Part 3, on offense. A couple years ago, when I was preparing for the big 2021 release cycle and getting nervous about it, I posted a series of articles on Substack. The last one was called On Offense. I'm going to read that one to you, with some right now edits, to remove a bit I now consider superfluous. You can go read the original if you think that's cheating. Recently, and this is in 2021, I posted this on my personal Facebook account. Me, I wish I could just do my shit in peace. Like or don't like, just leave me alone to do it. Also me, if nobody wants to burn your book, did you even make a real book? And the first comment under that was, so, you want to offend but don't want the backlash? It's like, yeah, that's the joke. But also, yes, seriously, or sort of no, but the response I gave to the comment was this. There's something very wrong with the offense-backlash dynamic to begin with. To not challenge it is to accept an ever-narrowing range of allowed expression and or just sit passively by while other people define allowed expression for you. And either way, that's unacceptable. Yet to challenge it is to attract the direct attention of the Eye of Sauron, and that's unbearable. That's true, but it doesn't get at the heart of the matter. I get being mad at fictional media. some political point you don't want rears its head in something, or a franchise you've loved has a new installment that completely misses the point or shits the bed, it attacks a belief you hold dear, whatever it is, I get being pissed. Okay. But being so pissed at a thing that you want to remove it from being and punish its creators for it and try to prevent anyone else from experiencing the creation, I don't understand it at all. Whether it was the internal concern over eldritch wizardry, the destruction of the first version of Palace of the Silver Princess, the Wings of the Valkyrie affair, just to name some RPG examples from the past. I don't get it. 100 million times I'll say before my life is done, I don't get it. So to say you want to offend, to me, can't exactly be right, because if I had what I actually want, it couldn't even be possible to offend in this way. But the world's strange, and so it is possible. And it's nothing but trouble when it happens. So what does one do in the face of this situation? Accept that other people can simply dictate what can or cannot be imagined? Just accept that these absurd limitations exist without protest? Well, no. Of course not. Because what I want is not to offend, but to be unbounded. And not just me. I want to see what other people do when they too are unbounded. What could people do if they truly felt free to just go for it without any fear at all? So no, I don't want to offend people. What I want is for people to not be offended. But, again, that's not how things are. So I want to be unbounded, but the offense people take is basically a bound. A barrier made of hurt feelings. But the barrier itself, it's so damn fascinating. Why does it exist? What causes the barrier to appear? What doesn't? When it appears, how does one deal with it? These are the questions I become obsessed with. That damn barrier. So I end up teasing it, poking with it, dancing with it, all sorts of experiments. And sometimes I get burned. It isn't just me being a troublemaker. It's also me following in the footsteps of all those difficult things that ran into this same barrier, that were challenged, hidden, suppressed to one degree or another, and whether by active campaigns or simply lack of any exposure, because such things get buried under the corporate product. And yet all these things, despite these obstacles, so many of them find their way to me and showed me there could be so many more things that can be done if you can just manage to shut the world out for a bit. And it's these things that are so much more special than anything served up through the mass market. And with all this swimming in my head, it would be a complete waste of my time to take any other path than the one I'm on. I want to be the person that delivers that special thing to the sort of person looking for something out of step with the world. And I acknowledge all the problems that will come from that. And of course, I'm volunteering to experience this burden, while at the same time believing that this burden is so pointless, unnecessary, and just plain fucking dumb. What could I do if this barrier wasn't there? Or, if I had been born with a brain that fit in better and I didn't have to worry about the barrier because I truly had no interest in anything near it. Just putting that out there. Would it have been possible, if I knew what I know now, to have arranged things a bit differently so I can do what I want without plowing flush into the barrier? But the idea of I need to be careful what thought experiments I come up with, even ones that could never ever result in the thing happening, because people will frown. That's a contemptible state of mind to be in. How guarded do we really have to be in our own spaces? And a book that you write or publish, if that's not your space, what is? Am I reading the world correctly with the built-in assumption that the world will at some point be peeking back at me, of course? Am I reading the world correctly, or just getting my brain into not imagining how people might interpret this impossible premise I chose to present with the assumption that people wouldn't like that I did? How healthy is any of this? Not at all, I guess. Maybe someday I'll see a path forward that allows me to do what feels natural to do without running into this barrier. In the meantime, I'm going right at it, even though I realize there's probably nothing but a real big cliff on the other side of it. Part 4. The truth. So one would think the easy thing to do is just stop it. Stop doing things that upset other people. Why do it? Why make other people unhappy? Why do things I know are going to seemingly compel people to also make me unhappy? Because that would be a lie. An intentional, premeditated, complete lie. See. The world is not a nice place. Existing as a biological being is simply suffering. Born helpless, having every day to gather sustenance or die, and to expel waste, repel disease, and then at some point, whether suddenly and violently or slowly and pitifully, we are going to die. You, me, everyone. We're dead. That's life. Suffering. Show off conspiracy against the human race. I think this book is pretty much the way of things. And then there's the social aspect. We're forced into a society we largely have no say in. Imprinted with values and ways of being that are halfway necessary. A pure anarchy of almost 8 billion people would be a worse hell than anyone listening to this has to deal with. Halfway necessary, halfway just arbitrary nonsense. This is our world. No matter how advanced we become, no matter how aware, no matter how we organize or innovate, these things will remain. There seems to be, on a very profound level, a zero-sum game concerning the suffering in life, as everyone's methods of coping with the miseries of their own life, on a short or long-term basis, increases someone else's. But I can put it more poetically, ripping off perhaps a more palatable source. Hopefully I don't slip into the voice. I believe in death. I believe in disease. I believe in injustice and inhumanity, torture and anger and hate. I believe in murder. I believe in pain. I believe in cruelty and infidelity. I believe in slime and stink and every crawling, putrid thing, every possible ugliness and corruption. Or, as a genius once wrote, only death is real. That is what we are and what life is. So what makes living worth it? It seems to me the logical thing to do in the face of this is to just kill yourself. What can possibly be worth this suffering? Some people turn to religion. Some people become very invested in family. Some engage in what they see as a higher purpose, attempting to improve the world. Sometimes they succeed. Me, it's always been about creative work. Art, to put it succinctly. Succinctly. Yes, art. Movies, books, music, anything that lifts me right out of and away from this world. And specifically, art that uses, that wallows in, that gathers the pain of this world and plays with it, shapes it, molds it, and thus transforms it into something else entirely. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I used the word thus, so you know I wrote this. And didn't just take it out loud. Anyway, literally taking life's worst miseries and making fun out of them. Or at least an entertainment commodity out of them. And to me, this is what makes life bearable. What makes life worth living. Imagination, fantasy, creation, preferably dark as all fuck. I see this as the birthright of every human being, to think and imagine and create according to their own will, their own motivations, to stop thinking of that wolf that's at the door, that's always at the door. The ability to imagine and create is what indeed makes us human in the first place. Let me take a little detour here. Pick up knife. You know what to do with it. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. I've done a little bit of rehearsing for this next bit. Knife. Just to let you know, though, yeah, get to the disclaimer. Calm down. This isn't a stunt or a gimmick, and I'm actually doing better than I have in some years. This is merely a visual presentation of the time in my life when I was there. When I sat on the floor of my room with the blade. It wasn't an IKEA knife, but I couldn't find a normal double-sided straight razor thing. And just felt like I didn't want to be anymore. I've talked about this before in another video, but doing it outside of the ha-ha naked fat man context maybe is in order. I mean, I have no doubt, I am 100% sure that probably a surprising percentage of people watching this knows what that's like. They've been there. And I have no doubt, I am 100% sure that at least one person watching this video is there right now. They just don't want to be here anymore. And I just have to say to that one person, don't do it today. Don't do it today. Not because life is worth living. It's really not. Not because all of the people who would miss you, I mean, what do I know? Maybe you really did fuck up and alienate everyone who meant something to you. And getting back at them is not going to work. They don't give a shit about you alive. They won't give a shit about you dead. Don't do it today because you haven't tried everything yet. And you obviously have nothing better to do. I mean, you're already here in the world. You're already here. You're already going to die at some point. Are you really that much in a hurry? Chill the fuck out. Chill out. Sit back. Think about deep time. However big your problems are, they don't matter in the grand scheme. Shit. The entire existence of humanity is fundamentally meaningless. Life is just a chemical accident and coincidence. So fuck around a bit. The knife is always there for you if nothing else works. But life isn't coming back if you end it too soon. And I guess while I'm on this tangent, let's be a little responsible here. Have you gone through the standard call a helpline route? You never know. It might help. You know, doctors and medication. I mean, medication didn't work for me, but other people swear by it. I mean, it's like different people have different needs and respond to different things. Isn't that a wild concept? Or a support group. Try that. I mean, sure, none of these things are ideal, but neither is the credible self-surgery, right? That's not ideal either. So fuck it. Give it a go, not the crude self-surgery, the other stuff first. What's the worst that can happen if you already want to kill yourself? Or, here's an idea just for shits and giggles. Write about it. Take all of the feelings of frustration and pain and just wanting everything to be over and create something with it. Write a song. Make a movie. They're shot on cell phones now, too. Or a web series. Or do a vlog. Write a script to something. Write an RPG adventure. Paint how you feel. Doesn't matter if you have no talent. Just get a kid's watercolor set and smear it all around some paper until it looks like how you feel. Or do darkly comedic video skits spoofing depression medication ads. Plenty of TikTok and Instagram solo acts out there. Be one of them. Focus on the thing that's bothering you. You know? Or go to a stand-up club. Open mic night. Yeah. Let it all out through bad stand-up. Knock knock. Who's there? I want to kill myself. Make an audience feel as bad as you do. I mean, trust me. Trust me here. If you're doing open mic, you're not going to be the worst act of the night. But whatever you do show it to normal people. The ones who you don't understand how they just go through life seemingly happy as a fucking clam. You'll get one of 3 responses. Understanding, indifference, or they will be fucking horrified and react very badly because you are breaking their denial of reality. And that last one is enough to get you by until you find other things to fortify you. I mean, I'm not a proper counselor or anything, obviously. But I've been there. Really. So, just give yourself something to see through to the end and see how you feel about finishing it. Again, how much worse can it be than how you're already feeling? Anyway, yeah, let's adjust this, take some time, silence and zoom in. But yeah, because, that's enough about you. You selfish, conversation hijacking fuck. Selfish conversation hijacking fuck. Hit your punchlines, Jim. You know, back to my knife and my situation. You know what pulled me out of this? This. Show Forest of Equilibrium. Here. It didn't cheer me up any. It's a miserable, grim album of no joy and no hope. But it made me realize I wasn't alone. And things weren't great overnight. But having an outlet or an input, whatever, kept me going. Or, when my first marriage collapsed, I'd left everything and everyone I knew and moved across the world, and someone's sending me a fucking text on my phone that's now blocking the text. Very professional production, Jim. Anyway, when my first marriage collapsed, I'd left everything I knew and moved across the world to be with someone, but suddenly I was alone. And I decided to stick it out in this weird country. But I was alone, and I was a mess. I tried asking people, how do I access the mental health system here? And the one response that I remember was laughter. Oh, Jim's going crazy, ha ha! I came so close to being homeless. I was sleeping on someone's floor as it was. I mean, does that count as not being homeless? And when I started the LotFP RPG blog, this is the situation I was in. But if I didn't even have that floor to sleep on, that would have effectively meant deportation. And who knows what sort of miserable shit my life would have been. I don't think I would have been doing what I do now. And you know what got me through that? Kept me minimally functional? This. Show so long, suckers. I still have my wheels rolling, but the engine is old and petrol is low. And that's why I don't front a band. And the singer of this band, and the songwriter for most of the album, I shouldn't have put it down yet, went by the name of Albert Witchfinder. He goes by his real name now, Sami Hunin, and I'm not good with Finnish names. He's not dead. I'm not saying was because he's dead. I'm saying that because he doesn't use the name much anymore. He went by the name of Albert Witchfinder, and he got into the whole doom thing through Cathedral 2, and he's described himself in an interview, so take it what it's worth, as being diagnosed with, quote, psychotic manic depression, unquote. And all of this actually has a point relevant to the greater topic that I'm talking about here. Not always, but often, people who make disturbing work are in some way or another themselves disturbed. I mean, hell, I finally have a proper psychiatrist appointment in 2 months, fucking socialized medicine, so we can start putting names and labels on what the fuck is wrong with me. But obviously there's some screw or another loose up here. Yeah? So, when you people out there decide on your little crusade to start cutting out anything and anybody that doesn't fit into your good and mandatory view of proper creative work, of proper behavior, of proper thought, of proper action. When you cut that out, when you cut those people, that is itself harm. You are harming people who do this to, at least in part, cope with the hell of life. You cut out the people who experience life this way in favor of what? Only people who are going to portray it as they think, or more to the point, you think it should be? Or maybe just yes man, plastic beige, no talent fuckfaces who couldn't make anything interesting at all if our lives depended on it. And sometimes our lives do depend on it. No. People who do creative work or art tend to be out of step with the rest of the world. You can't force people to get in line and also expect them to keep a unique voice. It doesn't work like that. So I find restrictions on what one is allowed to imagine, or restrictions on means to express that imagination. Any such limits on creative work, or who gets to engage in it, rating systems, attempt to water down, make suitable for a broader audience. Let's not even talk about the suppression of already extant work. These things are maybe not assassination attempts, although emotionally, subjectively, when someone does that to me, it really does feel like they're trying to kill me. But it's not really an assassination. It's more of, it's realistically more of a forced cultural lobotomy. It's artistic rape. Yeah. I'll put this down now. And I'll probably step on it. Okay. Part 5. Who decides? And here we get to the crux of everything. With competing ideas of where exactly the line is for artistic expression, and with different people feeling offended or even harmed by different expressions or by the suppression of different expressions, who gets to decide what exactly is allowable and or readily available? Who should? Well, we can't answer that question about the present without first taking a look into the past. We would be here all day and night long if I dove into the olden time things, like the Hays Code and now the MPAA, Seduction of the Innocent or the Comics Code, even the glory days of the Satanic Panic and pet pulling. It would be a bit much for our present purposes, and you're probably breathing a sigh of relief if you're looking at how long this video ended up being anyway. But I would think any of you familiar with any of these things know they did/do nothing but restrict what people are allowed to express creatively, or restrict or punish them for not restricting themselves. But let's start with Angry Mothers from Heck, the editorial from TSR and the February 1990 issue of Dragon Magazine. Read Angry Mothers from Heck. Oh, okay. Now I will read from a paper, and there's a reason that I didn't just put it in the teleprompter, so bear with me as I look down reading. Okay, this is from the column The Game Wizards, February 1990 issue of Dragon, Angry Mothers from Heck and What We Do About Them. TLDR, you submit to them completely. By James M. Ward. Ready? Avoiding the angry mother syndrome is something I talk about quite often at TSR Inc. Simply put, if a topic will anger the normally calm, caring mother of a gamer, we aren't interested in addressing that topic in any of our game products. Yes, I know that our company sells adventures full of swordsmen slashing their way through armies, with foul, smelly monsters waiting everywhere to crunch and eat player characters of every description. But I also know there are clear differences between fighting for its own sake and fighting for a good cause. The good cause part is largely what role-playing is and should be all about. I would like for all of you to think back on the best times you ever had in role-playing. Every gamer should have at least one adventure that really stands out in his mind. You remember when you finished a big quest, did almost everything right, and the treasure was in your character's arms and sparkling in your mind's eye. In almost all of these cases, there was an honorable, public-spirited, or life-saving goal at stake. That goal is the essence of what TSR wants to foster in its role-playing products. Sure, each product should be lots of fun to play and involve high adventure, but each product also has to have certain elements that any gamer's mother in this or any other universe would smile at. These qualities must be present in each gamer's role-playing to foster the right stuff. Here is a case to illustrate this point. Ever since the Monster Manual came out in 1977, TSR has gotten a letter or two of complaint each week. Oh, pity the multi-million-dollar company getting a letter or two of complaint each week. Oh, those poor people. You poor people. All too often, such letters were from people who objected to the mention of demons and devils in the game book. One letter each week since the late 1970s adds up to a lot of letters. And I thought a lot about those angry moms. When the AD&D registered trademark 2nd edition rules came out, I had the designers and editors delete all mentions of demons and devils. Oh, you became one. Okay. The game still has lots of tough monsters. But we now have a few more pleased moms as well. I know there are many of you out there who are saying to yourselves, well, I'm going to use demons and devils in my game no matter what TSR does. That's fine with us. Free choice is one of the positive aspects of role-playing, as long as you didn't put it online. Avoiding the angry mother syndrome has become a good basic guideline for all of the designers and editors at TSR Inc. But this concept also sets up a whole series of other guidelines to which all of TSR's products must adhere in one way or another. We'll cover them briefly here so that you can see where we are coming from when we design our products. TSR prides itself on the quality of the covers and interior art presented in every product. The male and female figures shown are heroic and good-looking, and would get either G or PG movie ratings. Our artwork serves to promote the image of high adventure in our games, but it doesn't deal in blood and gore. That isn't the image we want to project. A painting of a hero about to hew at a monster with a shining broadsword is just as effective, if not more so, as a painting showing the monster's guts being splattered messily about the room. Another consideration is the level of violence that goes on in adventures. Fighting the forces of evil often involves combating monsters and evil humans, but combat itself should be secondary to the goals of the adventure. Role-playing is based on the use of imagination. If you can defeat a monster without a fight, you are a better player than if you wade in and fight the monster with your sword and shield. Using your wits is much more rewarding than using muscles alone. Stated like a fellow person who sits behind a desk for a living. Rewards in a role-playing game take several forms. Your peers, the other players in the game, will always appreciate actions that help their characters. Tricking a monster or getting safely past a dangerous obstacle is one of the highest forms of role-playing, and well thought of by all. In long campaigns, the materials to fight evil cost a lot of money. When you have found and saved enough gold pieces, you can purchase supplies to fight monsters, and eventually, you might have enough to build your own castle or tower. Wait, I thought we weren't supposed to be fighting the monsters to be a good role player, so what do we need all the treasure for or the supply? Fuck it. Adventure is the concept that keeps our fans coming back to TSR's modules time after time. What exactly are those characters doing in those dark dungeons and magical forests? Gamers usually start out with the same pattern to their adventuring. They want to hack some monsters and get some treasure. The more treasure the gamers get, the more they enjoy the game. But anyone with any intelligence at all, and 99.9% of all role players have a great deal of intelligence, which is why they enjoy role-playing, find that hacking and slashing becomes boring very quickly. TSR has produced its share of hack and slash dungeons, but since the late 1970s, much more time has been spent on the saving the princess idea. Saving the princess takes on many forms. In most cases, it doesn't even involve a princess. Well, what a great name for it then. But the concept is almost always the same. Each module creates a situation in which the PCs have a goal worthy of their talents. TSR's product have used hundreds of goals of this sort, and is actually, such as actually saving a princess, curing silver dragons of a terrible disease, and protecting small towns from raiding giants. Those who play in these modules like heroic goals. They like the challenge of doing something tough. They like to receive rewards for helping others out. And they like to feel good about their characters after these PCs accomplish something useful. If anything is accomplished by this article, I would like for all readers to be able to point to it as a policy statement of TSR Inc. This company is interested in presenting material that promotes all of the qualities that parents want their children to have as those children grow up. The bottom line for TSR's role-playing products is that we believe that role-playing has many positive effects on role players themselves. Those benefits are put into our games on purpose. We care about our products and want as few angry moms as possible. That's who could possibly argue with any of that, but no, sorry, I had something else smart-ass to say. Sorry, stepping all over my scripted lines with my improv. What a courageous defender of the arts that James Ward was. Hopefully he's better now. I haven't checked. Anyway, this was an official statement that pretty much exemplified everything I hate in this world. Entertainment as moral instruction, and the association of a preferred entertainment style with being a good person. And on top of that, the statement is completely incoherent. First of all, look at the caricature of the angry mothers. Show the page. Look at that. Look at that. Right in the center of a piece that argues that the very people they're caricaturing are right, and the company is going to do everything they can to please them. Holy shit! I try these days not to use memey internet cliches like, I can't even. But looking at this, I can't even. Second, note that they claim for their products the purpose of being an educational, if we're being generous, or propaganda, if we're not, tool to hopefully influence their customers' real-world sense of morality, so they can win approval of people that aren't their customers and who they don't expect to become their customers. And this was published in a place only their hardcore customer base would see. Is your brain melting yet? Mine is. And third, while they're explaining to their audience why they are making sure their products will be acceptable to people who are not their audience, they engage in shameless pandering. But funny enough, while they're telling their role-playing customer base that, quote, 99.9% of all role players have a great deal of intelligence, which is why they enjoy role-playing, they're, just coincidentally, also pushing the idea that agreeing with the company's content policies is one sign of this intelligence. Bloody hell. Oh my God. A nerve, someone might say. One thing is for sure, though. If you actually thought your customers possessed a great deal of intelligence, you would never, ever talk to them this way. And that was the public-facing stuff. Internal TSR memos from 1982, 1992, and 1994, last I checked, maybe more now, concerning content guidelines are out there to find, and they're too much to read here as part of this video. Maybe I'll remember to link them in the video description. And now, we walk into Mordor. Wizards of the Coast, June 2020 statement, Diversity and Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, I'm reading that too, but in the teleprompter, since there's not going to be a graphical thing I need to show you. Wizards of the Coast, June 17th, 2020. Dungeons and Dragons teaches that diversity is strength, for only a diverse group of adventurers can overcome the many challenges a D&D story presents. And that spirit, making D&D as welcoming and inclusive as possible, has moved to the forefront of our priorities over the last 6 years. We'd like to share with you what we've been doing and what we plan to do in the future to address legacy D&D content that does not reflect who we are today. We recognize that doing this isn't about getting to a place where we can rest on our laurels, but continuing to head in the right direction. We feel that being transparent about it is the best way to let our community help us to continue to calibrate our efforts. One of the explicit design goals of 5th edition D&D is to depict humanity in all its beautiful diversity by depicting characters who represent an array of ethnicities, gender identities, sexual orientations, and beliefs. We want everyone at home around the game table. We want everyone to feel at home around the game table and to see positive reflections of themselves within our products. Human in D&D means everyone, not just fantasy versions of Northern Europeans, and the D&D community is now more diverse than it's ever been. Throughout the 50-year history of D&D, some of the peoples in the game, orcs and drow being two of the prime examples, have been characterized as monstrous and evil, using descriptions that are painfully reminiscent of how real-world ethnic groups have been and continue to be denigrated. That's just not right, and it's not something we believe in. Despite our conscious efforts to the contrary, we have allowed some of those old descriptions to reappear in the game. We recognize that to live our values, we have to do an even better job in handling these issues. If we make mistakes, our priority is to make things right. Here's what we're doing to improve. Ah, shit, the teleprompter didn't put the bullet points. I had a good bullet point joke, but I guess I won't do those. Okay. We present orcs and drow in a new light in two of our most recent books, Eberron Rising from the Last War, and Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Teleprompter formatting doesn't have the italics either. In those books, orcs and drow are just as morally and culturally complex as other peoples. We will continue that approach in future books, portraying all the peoples of D&D in relatable ways and making it clear they are as free as humans to decide who they are and what they do. When every D&D book is reprinted, we have an opportunity to correct errors that we or the broader D&D community discovered in that book. Each year, we use those opportunities to fix a variety of things, including errors in judgment. In recent reprintings of Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd, for example, we changed text that was racially insensitive. These reprints have already been printed and will be available in the months ahead. We will continue this process, reviewing each book as it comes up for a reprint and fixing such errors where they are present. Later this year, we will release a product, not yet announced, that offers a way for a player to customize their character's origin, including the option to change the ability score increases that come from being an elf, a dwarf, or one of D&D's many other playable folk. This option emphasizes that each person in the game is an individual with capabilities all their own. Curse of Strahd included a people known as the Vistani and featured the Vistani heroine Esmeralda. Regrettably, their depiction echoes some stereotypes associated with the Romani people in the real world. To rectify that, we've not only made changes to Curse of Strahd, but in two upcoming books, we will also show, working with a Romani consultant, the Vistani in a way that doesn't rely on reductive tropes. We've received valuable insights from sensitivity readers on two of our recent books. We are incorporating sensitivity readers into our creative process, and we will continue to reach out to experts in various fields to help us identify our blind spots. We're proactively seeking new, diverse talent to join our staff and our pool of freelance writers and artists. We've brought in contributors who reflect the beautiful diversity of the D&D community to work on books coming out in 2021. We're going to invest even more in this approach and add a broad range of new voices to join the chorus of D&D storytelling. And we will continue to listen to you all. We created 5th edition in conversation with the D&D community. It's a conversation that continues to this day. That's at the heart of our work, listening to the community, learning what brings you joy, and doing everything we can to provide it in every one of our books. That part of our work will never end. We know that every day someone finds the courage to voice their truth, and we're here to listen. You're a role-playing publishing. Jesus. Okay. We are eternally grateful for the ongoing dialogue with the D&D community, and we look forward to continuing to improve D&D for generations to come. Okay. That was their statement. Back to me now. I don't see this statement as altogether different than the Mad Mother's editorial 30 years previous. They're not identical, but they do pull a few of the same tricks. Both are identical in a very specific way. They declare that their publications and the portrayal of the fictions within are a direct reflection and affirmation of their real-world morality, and it is their job to be moral stewards of their audiences. They claim that it is the function and responsibility of fiction and play to reinforce real-life positive values. They then define specific values which they deem to be real-world good, and then go about making the case that they are good people, and that their products will be morally and qualitatively good because their fictional and play material promotes and reinforces these things they declare to be real-world morally good positions. And by implication, this would make different creative choices immoral. This is far beyond trashing the idea of, it's not for everyone, but it just might be for you. You know, that kind of idiosyncrasy. You expect market leaders and corporate entities to embrace choices that appeal to as many people as possible. But this isn't that. Both the Mad Mothers and the diversity articles explicitly reject the "we want to be for everyone" mindset by casting anyone they don't appeal to as bad people in one way or another. You know, they don't seem to be interested in appealing to people with different tastes, even though they have the resources to devote to doing just that. And you know, what I use as a gold star example. Look at the full range of comedy specials and comedy programming in general that Netflix releases. I mean, you know, but both the Angry Mothers and the diversity pieces explicitly position their entire company's product line for being only for good and decent people who just coincidentally are good and decent because they are all for the exact values these products will represent. Number 2, related but not identical to number 1, they position the fictional depiction of certain bad things in their fictional product to be an endorsement of, or at least indifference to, those same bad things in the real world, and that this really, really matters in a fictional context. Even presenting these certain things in contexts impossible to replicate in the real world are to be eliminated in the fictional material. And number 3, in service to number 1 and number 2, both editorials denigrate past approaches and publications, and they position the new policies not as creative decisions or simply a new way forward, but as corrections to past errors. The old stuff isn't just different, not just old-fashioned, not just out of date, it's bad. These things aren't being freshened up. The old stuff is a mistake and in need of correction. I mean, the disclaimer boilerplate they slather all over all of the classic material on drive-through. Let's read that. Let's read that. This is what's at the bottom of all of the old TSR stuff over on drive-through RPG. Quote, "We, Wizards, recognize that some of the legacy content available on this website does not reflect the values of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise today. Some older content may reflect ethnic, racial, and gender prejudice that were commonplace in American society at that time. These depictions were wrong then and are wrong today. This content is presented as it was originally created because to do otherwise would be the same thing as claiming these prejudices never existed. Dungeons & Dragons teaches that diversity is a strength, and we strive to make D&D products as welcoming and as inclusive as possible. This part of our work will never end." Unquote. This disclaimer on all their classic material over on drive-through is similar to how different streaming services put disclaimers on old movies and TV shows these days. And it reinforces the past was a mistake attitude, as if we could have gotten here without going through there, you know. Do note they're not changing the classic material, you know, because to do otherwise would be this, you know, to actually change it would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. But the more recent releases will be changed. Curious how they demonstrate how awful they think the people that built their business were, and how important it is to preserve that for all time. But evidence of their own bad ideas from the day before yesterday, well, we can memory hole that, And of course, I think it's better to preserve than change these things, like has happened with authors, having their stuff changed lately. But it's very sleazy enough to not own up to what you actually thought the day before yesterday, even if you don't think that way today. But it's damned corrupt to not hold yourself to the same standards that you hold other people. But this does make the older, preserved products seem more like they were created by human beings for human beings, and not a marketing department looking to create a customer experience. Excuse me. Both pieces take the position... Okay, number 4. Got distracted. So that was the end of number 3. Number 4. Both pieces take the position that offending people means that they have done something wrong. All of this, all 4 points, is complete nonsense. Utter nonsense. Even if you 100% agree with the morals and values being promoted by the company at the time of these statements' releases. It denigrates the very concepts of fiction and imagination and makes functionally impossible the core role-playing concepts of pretending to be someone unlike yourself in a world different than the one outside your window. It is infantilizing. The differences between the 2 pieces, the Angry Mothers and Diversity in Dungeons & Dragons, the differences are striking. For all of the changes that were being made by TSR going into the 2nd edition era, for all of the hand-wringing they were doing about their content, 1st edition AD&D books were still getting new printings through at least July 1990. Yep. 6 months after the Angry Mothers editorial and policy declaration, and a year after 2nd edition hit the streets, there were new print runs being made of 1st edition books. Unedited as far as I can tell. Nude illustrations and wanton wench tables and assassins and demons and devils, all intact. Diversity in D&D is telling us that not only are they applying their new approach to new material, they are changing previous work when it is being reprinted. Of course, the biggest difference is the framing of why they're doing it. The Angry Mothers piece positions the issue as pressure from the outside. The Diversity piece positions its issues as coming from the creators and the player base. Maybe that's heartfelt. Maybe it's just being far more clever with how to present their new policies. But it's still a top-down manifesto pushing limits and ideas and presentation in their products throughout their product line, presented in moral and not creative terms. And this is dangerous, especially coming from a market leader. It narrows the acceptable range of ideas within the gaming space, which is absolute death for a creative field. That a company prefers to present their products, to reflect certain values inside their fictional worlds and outside, that's fine. It is a valid choice. For the market leader under the umbrella of a multinational corporation to present their creative decisions as moral guideposts is a direct attempt to control the imaginations of their customers and an industry as a whole, when really their only job is to enable the imaginations of those same customers and industry. Here's your box. If you create outside of this box, you're a bad person, says both the suit and the rabble. Seriously, what fucking idiot inside a creative field comes up with a manifesto of moral conformity within fictional work? I acknowledge, and still don't understand, but I acknowledge, pressure from outside creative fields. But when that happens, I don't see how every person within the field does not consider it their number one priority to protest, fight, and subvert every restriction placed upon them, even if you agree with the sentiment behind the restriction. And then I have a defect. My mind immediately just assumes anyone creating inside that box is a moron and a collaborator in the worst sense. And anyone working outside the box is a hero, even if they have nefarious motives for doing so. And yeah, what can I say? That's my gut instinct. Now, it's easier to look back with 30 years hindsight and see the angry mothers thing as quaint. But the creative and cultural pressures were just as real then. Remember, this was right in the middle of the family values era, still a couple of years before the Dan Quayle Murphy Brown debacle, over half a decade before the Surgeon General of the United States was forced to resign for publicly acknowledging that masturbation was a natural part of human sexuality. So, the pressures were just as real then as they are now, even if the specific issues aren't the same. The 80s saw Dungeons & Dragons condemned in mainstream press as satanic and creating a suicide risk in its players. Many children had their D&D books thrown away or burned in front of them, and physically punishing children for expressing the wrong values or behaving improperly was widely considered a private family matter, a parent's right and not abuse. So, the pressures TSR were responding to in its Angry Mothers piece were every bit as real, the cultural landscape every bit as fucked, as our current situation and the landscape Wizards of the Coast finds itself in. And yet I still think TSR was wrong to give in to the pressures to conform to the greater cultural landscape. The form LOTFP takes is largely my reaction to seeing how people responded to this pressure in my childhood. All those childhood years of having to defend role-playing in general and D&D in particular from ridiculous bullshit, only to have TSR come out and basically agree with their critics and accusers publicly. For fuck's sakes. And just a few years after the Angry Mothers editorial, Vampire showed you could throw that entire mindset and playbook away, and not only was it fine as far as the audience was concerned, they even overtook D&D at one point in popularity, in no small part because, everything else being equal, and that's a big qualifier, restricting yourself creatively puts you at a massive disadvantage against others who do not. But Wizards' current stance, one that much of the media and the public seem to enthusiastically agree with, sets off all the same alarm and bullshit bells to me as the old Angry Mother stance. And even if it weren't setting off alarm bells, counter-programming against the industry leader is always standard practice for smaller operations. So what's that look like out in the world? We can see some of it. What's that look like when maybe the majority, a large proportion, maybe the majority of the RPG audience will judge counter-programming as an immoral action? I mean, we can hope that most of the counter-programming would just be people doing their own thing without malice. But there are people out there inordinately angry with what Wizards is doing, and furious in general about anything SJWs or woke people do. And they do their counter-programming, and they do it antagonistically, and they'll find an audience for it. Isn't that fun for everyone? But, actually it is. What those people are doing is just as valid as all of the counter-programming and malice in creative work against the cultural rights influence in the 1980s. Just in terms of expression and art, never mind who you agree with and who you don't. In terms of expression and art, because those are the only important things in this conversation, it is the exact same thing. The only difference now is maybe you're on the other side of the exact same coin. Now, Lamentations of the Flame Princess is certainly an alternate choice, and it is counter-programming, but isn't going to be involved in any backlash to wizards. Well, we've been around for almost 14 years now, and our current product standards were pretty much fully conceptualized in 2011, excepting a few stylistic points that would be ridiculous to call political or moral. We're not going to change in response to what Wizards is doing with their diversity in D&D. We're also not going to change based on the shit they've been pulling lately. And we're not going to change in response to changing attitudes of the general public. We've got our vibe, and we will continue on with that, and we will ride the resulting ebb and flow in sales and popularity and criticism as best we can. And our vibe is, anything that has ever happened and can be imagined is fodder for imagination, is fodder for play, and fodder for LOTFP content. Unimaginable, unthinkable, unspeakable are words heeded only by small minds, not concepts to be respected or taken at all seriously. Or at least that's true for me, James Edward Radji IV, the publisher and green lighter of projects. LOTFP does give a lot of freedom and leeway to individual creators. To be a writer, artist, designer, it is to be a malcontent who bristles at being told how to think and what to do, so who knows how that's going to turn out. I know we have many things we have coming up that would utterly fail Wizards' content standards. Hey, I wrote that 2 years ago, and it's still true right now. The way they would fail all the TSR content standards before it. But the individual creator expression versus company policy difference is huge, I think. I'm sure all of them have different opinions about things, and some won't be in line with popular or tastemaker opinion, and popular and tastemaker are not the same things. And I'm sure I'll shrug and say, that's fine, to most of it, and it'll make its way into the world as part of LOTFP publications. Or maybe one or more of our creators is all on board with TSR and or Wizards guidelines, and their expression of the weird doesn't touch those particular boundaries. I'm sure I'll shrug and say that's fine to most of those too. Having a unified ideological front makes for boring, useless creations. Within one company it's bad enough, across an industry, death. I'm glad I put the knife down. But one thing is for sure and will remain constant. Anyone who agrees that what TSR was declaring in 1990 or what Wizards declared in 2020, anyone who thinks that either one of those is the one true and moral way to imagine or to publish, will in all likelihood not like LOTFP as a company or me as a person. Part 6. Lines. Before I go on, I want to mention something. Job Bittman, he of Towers 2 and Book of Antithesis fame, I'm not picking him up off the floor, has been trying to get me to do a new project of his for a while now. I've refused because the whole thing makes me uncomfortable, and I don't want to touch that sort of thing. In the past couple months, I've tried to reach a compromise with him about it, but he's not for that compromise, apparently. Now, when I told my girlfriend about the project, that I was willing to do it if some conditions were met, I'm not going to exaggerate and said we had an argument about it, but we did have a long discussion where she tried to talk me out of doing it, even with the compromises I'd offered. I'm mentioning this to you so you all know that I do have lines. There are things that make me uncomfortable and that I won't touch. Take this, for example. Show the boiled angel box. This is a reprint of comics, zines, cartoons, whatever they are. The person who made them, Mike Diana, went to jail in the 90s for having published what's in this box. After he got out on parole, the police had the right to make unannounced searches of his house to make sure that he wasn't making unauthorized cartoons. Yeah, it was Florida, and that all happened while I lived there, but I wasn't aware of the case until a few years after that. But this is still something that happened in the United States of America. Frank Henenlotter made a documentary some years about the whole thing called Boiled Angels, The Trial of Mike Diana. I saw it at a film festival a little while back, 7 years I think at this point, and was quite literally moved to tears by it. See, me getting this set was a completely natural thing to happen given my interest in free expression and things that are suppressed. But I can't get through it. I haven't read it all, and I won't. It's fucking rough. I mean, it's way too rough even for me. My stuff is Disney princess shit compared to this. But I'm not offended by it. I fully support all of you to get yourself copies of this stuff that disturbed me to the point where I don't want to look at it anymore. And if Job takes his project and publishes it elsewhere with someone else, or if he does it himself, I will not speak against it. I will not attempt to sabotage the dissemination of the work that made me uncomfortable. I know that my lines are personal, and no one else needs to pay any attention to them. And indeed, to try to enforce my lines on other people would make me a sad and a dangerous person. And people have taken knocks at me for saying this sort of thing, making myself out to be the great and good looking down on the unwashed masses. And well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm a complete dumpster fire of a human being in so many ways. So many ways. And a lot of my concern in life is trying to figure out how to be an effective person more than it is how to be a good one. But in this one category, yeah. I got a goddamn halo, and I got wings compared to people who try to rid the world of imaginative works they don't like. I mean, it's like the song says, I am God, and I'm the only one that can bring back freedom to your heart. Because sooner or later, you must understand, my words bring freedom and rescue for man. Part 7, concern over creative content, is fake. I had a point in reading all that nonsense from TSR and Wizards beyond just encouraging you all to facepalm about it. It's a good example how the concern over certain things is functionally identical, even when the certain things are completely different. The point is that this sort of concern is highly dependent on time and place. It's fashion, ephemeral. Hold on for 5 minutes, relatively speaking, and it passes. Yesterday it was all about something else. Tomorrow it'll be about something different too. Disturbingly, it's always about something. We just can't seem to let this sort of thing go altogether as a society or a species as a whole. And I don't know what could be done about that. But I do know that the definition of a good person has nothing to do with sticking your finger in the air and figuring out which way the wind is blowing today. And doing work worth doing has nothing to do with that either. And we all know this is true. We know. We look back on what outraged people in the arts and in popular entertainment in the past, and we can hardly wrap our heads around it. Rites of Spring caused a riot? What? Married couples on TV had to be shown to sleep in separate beds? What? D&D is satanic? What? But somehow, today's concerns, the concerns of right now, they're real. They're important. Of course they are. People in the future will look at us and be proud that we raised a stink about this book, about that show. They won't think we were silly like we do every single person and example who's ever tried to limit what could be done in artistic mediums in the past. We won't be like the people who went around knocking the cocks off all the statues in Rome. Not us. That's all it's worth. That's all it's worth. The people today trying to impose certain values on creative work are absolutely no different than the people doing so in the past. Anita Sarkeesian is Brent Bozell III. They're the same fucking person. Yeah, both those names are yesterday's news, but I unplugged from the scold cycle in my industry years ago, and, from normal news and commentary for almost 2 months now. I feel much better for it, actually. I hope I never feel obliged to keep up on what's happening ever again. That would be nice. Probably not realistic, but nice, Because keeping up with the times is not a thing people should do, or at least not something that should be required of them. Yeah, something happened this morning, and you have an opinion, I have an opinion, but there's no reason for there to be a consensus between us or a pressure for either of us to change. More on that in a bit. And before someone else is so clever as to put that Grandpa Simpson quote in the comments, you know the one. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it anymore, and what's it seems weird and scary. It'll happen to you. Well, I assure you, I've never been with it. Not ever. I was a strange little boy who didn't play well with the other children. Somewhere along the way, I decided I wasn't much interested in fitting in with how everyone else was. They were acting like assholes. I don't want to act like an asshole. I don't understand how people can stand always worrying about whether they fit in or not. Yeah, I'm always worried about being forcibly removed, but that's not quite the same thing. And I absolutely reject, and I ask you, I can't command you, can't force you, I ask you to absolutely reject the idea that creative work should be subject to the contemporary whims of this concerned citizen or that it must fit contemporary values. And I absolutely reject the idea that I am at all responsible to consider the tastes or sensitivities of people who are so culturally retarded that they feel entitled to tell other people how they're allowed to imagine. Now, does this mean that whatever I do, myself or through publishing other people, this does mean that whatever I do, there will be a popularity ceiling far lower than if I did care about having my finger on the pulse of society, I guess you'd call it. The current RPG market, I don't know. But obviously, weirdo blood and tits and difficult shit isn't going to be as popular as straight-ahead feel-good entertainment. But my ceiling should be far higher than it is right now. So what's going on with that? Part 8. The entire market is fraudulent. Here's where I get in over my head trying to explain things I only see from a very self-centered point of view. So I bet you're glad you stuck with me all this way, and I just say that now, but let's go! Who is responsible for creating culture? Who is responsible for maintaining culture? Told you I was in over my head. But let's narrow that down a little bit. Teeny tiny bit. I'm talking about creative culture. I guess what's called pop culture. Words, images, hell, even music. TV and movies do have different dynamics. The massive investment required to produce those precludes much in the way of independent actors competing in the field creatively. They're going to argue, but you know what I mean. Now, the ideal is that someone comes up with an idea. They write a book, they paint a picture, they compose a song. They can put it out themselves, and it will exist out in the void in competition with the millions of other people hoping to grab the public attention. Or it gets some business backing to go through the channels. The rewards get split up many more different ways, but the potential take for everybody becomes much higher. It's a choice, But the ideal is, whichever way you go, if it appeals to people, success will come commensurate with how appealing it is to how many people. That's the fairy tale of how it should be, of how it's supposed to work. However, all the platforms where one can self-publish, all of the business backing that allows the potential for mass appeal, they don't simply facilitate connecting artist to audience and let the public decide. Oh, no. The game is rigged. Their thumbs are firmly on the scale. They gatekeep, they curate, they worry about even the smallest groups of people who might complain about who knows what the hell ever. Oftentimes, their goal is more public relations than the business of connecting creator to the market. That public relations thing is a killer. I already mentioned Sarkeesian and Bozell, but of course there are others. There are always others. They're always connected to a larger political infrastructure and cultural criticism as a way to further other political goals. Mary Whitehouse and the National Viewers and Listeners Association, Tipper Gore and the PMRC, Pat Pulling and BAD. All of these fucking cultural cancers and whatever their equivalents are nowadays, they have the power to move culture away from what the creators and the people want to something that's built around not being criticized, not being accused of contributing to whatever social rot has been invented to be concerned about at that particular moment. And of course, attacking art is how we fix the rot. Shrug shoulders in a bemused manner. For those of you in the US, quiz time. I'd like you to name any of the people on the MPAA ratings board. Don't look it up, just off the top of your head. How does one end up with that job? Anyone know? Again, off the top of your head. Yet those people are absolutely in charge of what can and cannot be seen in American cinema. Oh, that'll be an NC-17 unless you cut that bit out. And the entire industry is now built around these ratings. People aren't making a movie and then seeing how the ratings play out, what it ends up in. They make movies with the explicit goal of hitting a certain one of these pretty arbitrary ratings categories. The public relations and marketing of creative works are baked into the creation of these works from their very conception and then pumped out to the entire world as the standard of what motion pictures are like. How is everyone not as pissed about that as I am? And by the way, Quint getting eaten by the shark right on camera, quite graphically, that was a PG movie once upon a time. Ratings are made up nonsense that do nothing but suppress and restrict art. And the excuses people use for criticizing work and wanting to make it more difficult for the public to get are often just outrageous. And so often they just boil down to people treating you like a child. Either being concerned about what your mother would think. I'm 48 years old, If my mother doesn't like what entertainment I enjoy or the books I publish, even though it's largely her fault in the first place, she can suck my dick and swallow it all down. What would a gamer's mother think, for fuck's sake? Or, we're supposed to be sympathetic to how our creative choices or the creative work we enjoy would affect a child if they were exposed to it, like my tastes or yours are or should or ever going to be influenced by what some fucking kid might think about it. I mean, these think of the children arguments. Fuck the children. Seriously. Spread their little ass cheeks wide and just fuck them. Fuck them hard. And do it now, before they grow up and it's too late. And by the by, just throwing this out there for no reason other than to have people yell at me, I consider all of the arguments about, that material is insensitive to this or that group or another. It's functionally identical to the think of the children argument. We recognize think of the children as a bullshit method of criticism or control, but put just about any other demographic category in there instead, and somehow everyone's hopping to attention when it's the same damn thing. And the concerns over these other groups are just as silly as concerns over the children. I mean, it's a fucking book, or a movie, or a painting. What they're depicting isn't real, even if it might remind you of some real unpleasant thing. Fucking deal with it, you goddamn child. But the people in serious business positions that decide whether your product gets pushed to the front or buried so deep nobody will ever find it, effectively. The people who decide what you can conveniently access and what you've really got to dig around for and be stigmatized for searching for. They've dealt for so long with the whiners, the complainers, the think of the children crowd, that they internalize it and make decisions on other people's creative work. Simply to avoid all that. It's become so pervasive that selecting for this sensitivity seems to be a qualification to even be in a position of power in a creative industry. I mean, take YouTube. Have you noticed how a lot more channels are bleeping swearing now and openly complaining in their videos about YouTube's monetization and age restriction guidelines? Because YouTube's gotten more strict. When someone like Red Letter Media, who for well over 10 years has had the same shtick, suddenly is running afoul of YouTube regulations, something's fucked. We are in a period of the walls closing in. If anything had the capacity to be by the people, for the people, it's uploading videos to YouTube. But now restrictions. We, as a people, are not in charge of our own culture. And wait right there. Stop for a second. One of you morons is just about to write "because capitalism," in the comments, because all of these are business decisions being made. And no, not capitalism. Not this time. Actual capitalism would co-opt and want to do business with and connect to subcultures not already being catered to. Assimilate, not suppress. Gatekeeping so producers can't sell and consumers can't buy seems pretty antithetical to the idea of capitalism and markets. Capitalism would encourage the marketization of underserved niche markets. No, this is a deeper human failing than that. The trial of Socrates, Fictional, but go watch the stoning scene from Monty Python's Life of Brian. It's this same sort of thing. Jehovah. Oh, he said it. He said the word. The church's suppression of heresy and blasphemy before capitalism was ever a thing. The Soviet Union suppressed and controlled creative work as much as any society ever has, and their founding ideology is anti-capitalist. Nazis, synonymous with book burning, attacked the Jews in no small part because of their contributions to capitalism. Remember that Jewish stereotypes about money and banking grew from the fact that Christians and Muslims for a long time basically forbade themselves from practices that allow modern banking to exist, and Jewish people were not so restricted. So no, this isn't a capitalism issue. And Zach Smith wrote a good piece on the ideological roots of art suppression, role-playing games as degenerate art back in 2018, and shut the fuck up. The man knows his art history, so I don't want to hear shit about him. And that piece, degenerate art, role-playing games as degenerate art, was prompted by a local distributor in Britain destroying some LotFP book because they were disgusted by it. And that did actually happen. Also related is his 2014 post, D30 Ways to be the Worst Art Critic in the History of the World, which was the culmination of his Art History for D&D People series. Links to those in the description if I can't figure out how to pop it on the screen anywhere. Part 9. Is this video ever gonna end? Well, the fight never ends, so why should the complaining about it ever end? I mean, that there should be or needs to be a fight to make complete nonsense and get it in front of people, and what I do is complete nonsense. It's so exhausting, it's mentally debilitating, and it's ridiculous. It's also the very essence of life. It's the only meaning my existence has, the only meaning it will have. There is no choice for me. No matter how much it wears me down, they're gonna have to kill me to stop me. And that is what they're trying to do. I mean, yeah, we won a recent battle, but that means nothing in terms of the greater war. A war where the ability of you and me and everyone else, our ability to have our own thoughts and our own tastes, that's what's at stake here. So who is in control of what is to be made and what is to be made available and what is allowed to be in front of the public to give the public the most free and open choice possible? I mean, the public having the most free and open choice possible is the goal, isn't it? Isn't it? I think everyone listening to me now, listening to me right now, knows who wants this and who doesn't. Because obviously, some people are going to think one way. Other people will think a second way. Yet more people think a third way. Ad infinitum, or why do I write things I've never heard out loud anyway? But, so forth and so on. To try to exclude certain types of thought and approaches to entertainment media, to try and win points against them with the idea if you reach a certain number of points, they go away. It's an impossible. It's a never-ending war. How is this desirable for anybody? All of these people who believe in the Mad Mother's approach or Wizard's current approach, they are entitled to create according to their tastes and values, and they deserve to have entertainment that caters to their taste, just as everyone else does. The problem is when they think everyone's entertainment should use the Mad Mother's standard or the Wizard's diversity standard. Then they have to be fought. But to think they should go away or be made to go away, that anything in their wheelhouse is bad and to be attacked, I mean, that is the thinking and tactics of the enemy. And adopting this strategy validates theirs. Winning in this environment means being able to both produce and enjoy things that are to our individual tastes without being forced to accept other standards. But it's a hollow victory if other people who make things contrary to our tastes cannot also produce and enjoy their things. Yeah, it sucks when market leaders adopt product standards that aren't to our tastes. It especially sucks when it seems to happen in many companies and types of media in quick succession. But victory is being able to disregard them and do your own thing and cultivating that. That is the real fight. That's it. That's the fight. And as my mind clears and my body heals and I'm inching ever closer to be back to my old self, I look at the carnage that has been wrought over the LotFP empire. I'm at a free RPG day, thanks to an ultimatum by an anonymous other publisher. My retail distribution's been restricted. Reviews on the biggest RPG forum forbidden. Other publishers openly targeting people who work with me. And forgive me for going all Alex Jones here, but as my mind emerges from the mist, it occurs to me that these aren't individual happenings. They seem more of a coordinated effort, and I've got no proof of that, of course. It's not like people doing this are going to, notify me about their efforts, But conspiracy or not, what exactly do I do about all of this? What do we all do about it? Specifically for me, what do I do that doesn't create the kind of conflict that threatens to reverse the improvements I've been able to make mentally and physically, and throw me right back into the pits of severe depression and debilitation? Because I've been there the past few years. I mean, shit, I'm sitting down to make this video because today is a bad leg day, and I'm traveling internationally soon, and I need to take it easy. I mean, I'm getting better, but I'm not good. Not yet. And as I gain my strength and start to feel more and more like a human being again, what is going to happen when I stop just saying that these people are trying to kill me? And what happens when I start behaving as if I actually believe that? I don't know. I don't want to know. And I'm pretty sure none of you want to know that either. Least of all the people that are doing this. But there is one thing I do know, though. I'll be seeing all of you very soon.